Chapter 1. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the affection called Hysteria in Women, and Hypochondriasis in Men 1. When from some grave accident the human system suffers any discomfiture, the animal spirits become a tactic. The urine is excreted in abundance and is limpid. All hope of getting better dies away. The patient anticipates all sorts of troubles. This ailment may attack any part of the body. Whatever part it does attack, it afflicts with symptoms coincident with the exciting cause. In the head, there will be apoplexy or hemiplegia arising soon after deliverance. Spasms, too, like epilepsy, vulgarly called strangulation of the womb, wherein the belly and stomach and parts towards the throat swell up, occur. Flavus hystericus, or a racking pain in the head, so limited as to be covered by your thumb, accompanied by the vomiting up of green matter, like rancid bile, may also be one of the pains attendant to us. The fit may simulate palpitation of the heart, cough, the iliac passion, colic, nephritis, or suppression of the urine. It occasionally excites violent vomiting and diarrhea. Externally, it brings on pains or swellings in the muscular parts of the flesh, the ankles swelling as from dropsy. Even it attacks the teeth. The pain in the back is most severe. The extremities are so cold that the body becomes corpse-like. Tears and laughter succeed each other, neither from any ostensible cause. Pealism may simulate the action of mercury. Hysterical pains attack all parts alike, leaving behind them a sensation of tenderness to the touch, just as if the parts had been beaten. 3. Bleed to vitch. Apply a galbanum plaster to the navel. Next morning, give Chichepal Cock 855 castor and powder, GRIG, Peruvian balsam necessi. Make into 12 pills. Take 4 every other morning, according to the strength. At 4 or 5 a.m. sleep upon them. Compound bryony water pound each year. Castor tied in a knot and hung in the glass 38. Loaf sugar, QS make into a julep. Take 4 or 5 spoonfuls whenever the spirits are low. 4. After the pill, the following should be used. Extract of wormwood Q. S make into 3 pills, to be taken at 5 p.m. for 30 days. Wash down with wine of wormwood. 9. If the form of a bolus be preferable, EK conserve of Roman wormwood. Conserve of orange peel AA3. Candied angelica, candied nutmeg. Venice treacle, AA dollar SS. Compound alrum powder, 5 EH. Candied ginger, 5 EAGs. Syrup of lemon juice, or failing this. Make into a bolus, to be taken night and morning. Wash down with wine of wormwood, or with 6 spoonfuls of the following infusion. Root of elecampane, root of masterwort, AA3. Leaves of common wormwood, leaves of lesser centauri. Leaves of white horehound, leaves of germander, handful. Peel of 2 oranges, sliced. Pour over it sherry wine, so as to cover all to the depth of 2 fingers. Strain as wanted. 6. With delicate persons, the iron may be given as a powder. K iron filings, fine 2J. Compound, arum powder, 5 coriander seeds, prepared, aniseed, fennel seeds, cinnamon, red coral, prepared, FVG, nutmeg, 5 Reduced to a very fine powder. Add as much white sugar as equals the weight of the other ingredients. Take out of a spoonful of S twice a day for 4 days, then 3J twice a day for 40 days. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of the wine of wormwood, or the following julep. Equaqua lactis alexiteria, 2 bizaichi. Compound gentian water, zif aqua absinthe magis cup. 3 finest white sugar, QS make into a julep. Acarnish wine with wormwood OSS, compound gentian water, $IGS, syrup of cloves, 5J make into a julep. Pick mirror galbanum, asafoetida AA3, castor 3s, balsam of Peru, QS make into pills, 12 to each tract. 3 to be taken every night. Wash down with 3 or 4 spoonfuls of compound bryony water. Continue to do this throughout. 7. If the pills purge, use QR, castor, 5G, volatile salts of amber, 55s. Extract of rue, QS. Make into 24 pills. 3 to be taken every night. Wash you down with 3 or 4 spoonfuls of the julep for hysteria. If the disease still continue obstinate, K lozenges of powdered myrrh, ninage, balsam of sulfur and turpentine, IV gum ammoniac dissolved. QS make into 4 pills to be taken morning and evening. Wash down with 4 or 5 spoonfuls of the julep for hysteria, along with 12 drops of spirits of hartshorn. The antiscorbutic electuary may be taken with the water described. In company with it, also the restorative electuary, with the addition of conserve of garden scurvy grass and 6 drachms of the compound of cuckoo pint. Wash down with the aforesaid water 9 or if the disease still continue, chalybeate waters must be tried. If these fail, sulfuric, such as those of Bath, 10. During the drinking of chalybeate waters, this must be observed. If any grave symptom occur referable to their use, they must be stopped until it goes away. 6 weeks or 2 months is the least time wherein benefit can be expected. Candied ginger, caraway seeds, and sugar may be taken occasionally to warm the stomach. Also, 3 pills for hysteria may be swallowed for the first 10 nights. Wash down with 4 or 5 spoonfuls of the julep for hysteria. As to the bath water, this must be drunk for 2 days, and on the 3rd used as a bath, and so on in turns for 6 weeks or 2 months. 12. If the chalybeates overheat, there may be taken, every 4th morning, 4 pints of purgative mineral waters. These, although they move the bowels, cause less disturbance than the purges of the shops. 18. If the disturbance be excessive, a little laudanum may be taken out of some anti-hysterical water every night for some time. 14. When the strength and spirits are much dejected by the disease, bleeding and purging are not to precede the steel. It may be put on at once. 15. When the symptoms are mild, bleeding and purging for a few days are sufficient. The pills for hysteria should then be given night and morning for 10 days. 16. When the pain is violent, as well as the vomiting and diarrhea, laudanum is to be given, and the spirits to be restored. If, however, the strength will bear, the laudanum should be preceded by a bleeding and purge, particularly in women of a masculine habit and of a sanguine temperament. With weak subjects and with subjects who have lately had the fit, it is sufficient to wash out the stomach with a gallon of posset. After this has been thrown up by vomiting, a large epistole, dessert. 103. Dose of Venice treacle, or of Orvietan electuary should be given, which should be washed down with a few spoonfuls of some spirituous liquor and with a few drops of laudanum. If the patient have all along vomited, so that the further action of an emetic may be dangerous, laudanum must be given in a dose sufficient to overcome the symptom. This must be repeated after each vomit, it being given in the solidest form possible, if liquid in a very small quantity of the vehicle, e.g. a few drops of laudanum out of a spoonful of strong cinnamon water, the patient, meanwhile, being perfectly quiet, and keeping her head quiet. Even when this symptom has been thoroughly subdued, the use of the laudanum may be continued for a few days. 17. These 2 points must be noted. Firstly, when we once begin to use laudanum, it must be used in such doses, so often repeated as to entirely subdue the symptom. A little space, however, may be allowed between each just to let us know what one dose has done before we hurry on to another. Secondly, that whenever we treat by means of laudanum, nothing is to be moved, nothing to be disturbed, not even by the mildest edema. 18. Venice treacle, used long and often, is a sovereign remedy in this, as in all other diseases arising from a want of due heat and concoction. 19. Sherry wine, medicated with gentian, angelica, wormwood, centauri, orange peel, and other restoratives if taken by 3 or 4 spoonfuls at a time, 2 or 3 times a day, helps other remedies, provided only that the patient be not ophaline or bilious habit. 30. Peruvian bark, in simple doses taken morning and evening for some weeks, has great virtue, especially in hysteric spasms. 21. With thin and Baiha's habits, a milk diet may be adopted, especially in hysterical colic, provided that the discomfort of the first few days can be got over. During that time, it coagulates in the stomach and is consequently less fit for keeping up the status of the body. Nothing, however, keeps up the spirits and warms the blood like plenty of riding on horseback every day. Carriage journeys are also useful. Chapter 2. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. Of the depuratory fever of the years 1661, 1662, 1664. L.R. Here the patient be young, bleed from the arm, and a few hours after, or the next day, 2 hours after dinner, order an emetic of the croquemetal. Have ready 6 or 8 pints of posset, so that he take a draught as often as he is sick or pert. After the operation of the emetic, give the following, or some similar paregoric: K black cherry water, Ziz plague water $SS, liquid laudanum, NTSVTCI, syrup of cloves, 5 each mix. And make into a draught, remedies of the croak. Metal, even in the smallest quantity, are not safe for children or persons under the age of adolescence to take. After this, inject the following enema every morning until the 11th or 12th day: archaic common decoction for clysters, chi, milk of the cow, J.E. brown sugar, syrup of violets, A.A. Make into an enema. 3. The bowels may now be allowed to remain confined, in order that the febrile matter may be all the more quickly concocted. To this end, even moderate cordials are conducive. At Gascoigne's powder, GR syrup of cloves, QS of cloves. Make into a bolus, to be taken every 8th hour. Wash down with 5 or 6 spoonfuls of the following julep: Ca aqualactis alexiteria, black cherry water, AS syrup, plague water, syrup of cloves, AA and J mix, and make into a julep. 4. After adhering strictly to this method, you will find about the 15th day, both from the improved excretion of urine and from the manifest remission of the symptoms, that it is seasonable to give the common purging potion. It happens at times, especially with old men, that after the fever has been cured and the body been purged, the patient remains very weak and expectorates a vast quantity of viscid phlegm, sometimes with cough and spitting. In this case, he may take some old Malaga wine with a toast in it. 6th. If passio ilaica supervene, a scruple of salts of wormwood may be prescribed out of a spoonful of lemon juice morning and evening. In the intermediate times, a few spoonfuls of distilled mint water without sugar may be taken. Meanwhile, a live puppy should continually lie on the belly. When the pain and vomiting has ceased for 2 or 3 days, a drachm of the pill cock, major dissolved in mint water, may be given. The puppy is not to be removed before the pills are used. 7. To guard against a relapse, the patient must persist in the use of the aforesaid water for some time, and keep off the cold by doubling folds of flannel on his belly. Chapter 3. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the pestilential fever of the years 1665, 1666. Albroa the patient in bed. Then cover him with bedclothes. Tie up his forehead with a linen rag. If vomiting do not commence, exhibit the following or some similar sudorific: K. Venice treacle 3s, egalectuary mintage, Gascoigne's powder, Giorethkine cochineal, Giarvolai saffron, GFTS. Make into a bolus, to be taken every 6 hours. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of the following julep: K. aqua cardui benedicti aquas cordi camp, Aziv. Aqua theriacala stilatitia, 3 cloves, 3 mix, and make into a julep. If vomiting be present, the sudorific may be put off until perspiration begins to flow from the mere weight of the bedclothes, the face being kept under the blankets. When such sweating begins, it must be kept on for 24 hours by repeated draughts of sage posset, or with small beer in which a little mace has been boiled. The strength of the patient may be kept up by means of restorative broths. When a tumor has begun to show itself, do not dare to bleed. For 24 hours after the end of the sweats, the patient must keep to his bed in order to avoid cold. His shirt must be allowed to dry on his back. All his drink must be lukewarm. The sage posset must be continued. Next morning, a purgative potion should be given. The years 1667 to 8 produced a variolous fever and variole. The years 1669 to 72 produced a dysenteric fever. The years 1673 to 5 produced a comatose fever. The treatment of these I do not now touch upon. I have done this in my description of the fever of 1685. Chapter 4. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on intermittent fever. 1. 2 fit begins with chills and shivers, succeeded by heat. A sweat then follows, and an apyrexy succeeds. During, however, the first days of the disease, especially in autumn, there is a remission rather than an intermission. During both the cold and hot fits, the patient feels sick, is uneasy, and has thirst and a dry tongue. In children, a swelling of the belly. In adults, a swelling of the legs indicate the breaking up of the fever, pain of the tonsils, hoarseness, hollowness of the eyes, and the facies hippocratica are signs of death. F. Peruvian bark, finely powdered. Toejai, syrup of cloves, or syrup of dried roses, QS make into a lecture, to be divided into 12 doses, one to be taken every 4 hours, washed down with a draught of wine immediately after each fit too. If this purge, give 10 drops of liquid laudanum every other time the bolus is given. To prevent a relapse, especially in Cortons, repeat this process every week 3 times. If the form of a pill be preferred, EK Peruvian bark, finely powdered, 3T. Syrup of cloves, QS make into moderate-sized pills. Take 6 every 4 hours. EK bark and powder, Zai, Rhenish wine, Oija. Soak in a cool place and strain through a jelly bag. Take 3 ounces every 3 or 4 hours. 4. If the vomiting be so continued as to prevent the bark being swallowed, a scruple of salts of wormwood out of a spoonful of lemon juice should be taken 6 or 8 times in 2 hours. Then 16 drops of liquid laudanum out of a spoonful of strong cinnamon water. Soon after the vomiting has ceased, begin with the bark. 5 in spring intermittents, and emetic so given as to act before the access of the fit does great good. Sometimes a clyster thrown up during the days between the fit 3 or 4 times has affected the cure. This may also be attempted thus. K. Virginian snake root, finely powdered, grew erwars peak taken 2 hours before the fit. The patient then must sweat under bedclothes for 3 or 4 hours. This he must do twice before the fit. 6 times. If weakened by repeated paroxysms, the patient may take conserve of bugloss flowers, AA zis, conserve of rosemary, thress, candied lemon peel, candied nutmeg, Venice treacle, feverage, Kermes confection, 3 G3II, 5 Vicks. Take a portion the size of a hazelnut night morning. Wash down with a few spoonfuls of simple plague water, sweetened. No clyster allowed. 7. If towards the end of the disease dropsy set in, and that before the fever has departed, purgatives are not to be used, but instead thereof infusions of horseradish, wormwood tops, lesser centauri, juniper berries, broom ashes, and seed. When the fever is over, cathartics may be given. 8 for the ague of infants, Rhenish wine, Eazai, bark, finely powdered, 5 syrup of cloves, QS mix, and make into a julep. Take 1 or 2 spoonfuls, according to the age of the patient, every 4 hours until the fits cease. In case of diarrhea, add every other time 1 or 2 drops of liquid laudanum. Chapter 5. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On the stationary fever from 1685 to 1690, LFN Vesnes, and chills and turns. Pain in the head and limbs, pulse natural, occasional cough, pain about the neck and jaws. Increase of fever towards night, disquiet. Thirst, the tongue either moist or coated all over with a white rough fur, brown in the middle with a white fringe at the edges. Coma and frenzy if the patient always keep his bed. Pedicized purple spots, miliary eruptions, redder than those of measles. On F, he be overheated as to regimen, also inordinate pulse, subsultus tendinum, and death. The sweats at the beginning are symptomatic. If forced, they come from the head most and are clammy. They also transfer the morbific matter to either the head or the limbs. 3. Bleed from the arm to 10 ounces. Repeat the bleeding in case of dyspnea, racking headache during the cough, or any notable sign of bastard pleurisy, in which case repeat the bleeding and purging until recovery. 3. In the evening, apply a blister. Next morning, give a lenitive potion. Repeat this 3 times every other day. At bedtime, on those days when the purge has been given, prescribe K. cowslip flower water, 3 ige, syrup of poppies, 5 freshly squeezed lemon juice, 2 spoonfuls. Mix and make into a draught. 4. Apathy and hiccup, coming of their own accord after the stationary fever. 2040 cure the fever, go off of their own accord. If they continue, an ounce of bark with syrup of the red poppy Q. S. Made up in the form of an electuary or of pills, clears them off. Take after the pill or electuary a draught of skimmed milk. This is a sure cure once interfered with by lying in bed. 5. On the days when there is no purging, Fee conserva flugula, conservo F hips, conserva burberry, at 33s, cream of tartar, 5, syrup of lemons, QS, take a portion, the size of a nutmeg, 3 times a day. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of the following julep, Kia purslane water, lettuce water, cowslip flower water, AAZs, syrup of lemons, Thress syrup of violets, syrup and violets, J mix, and make into a julep. Air East spring water, OJ, rose water, lemon juice, best white sugar, add C, boil over a slow fire. Until Alice clear, take 3 ounces ad libitum. The following gargle may be prescribed. Crepe key, crab juice, os. Mix and make into a gargle. 6. If the fever be so bad that the patient cannot take a draught, 2 scruples of the pill, cock mag, may be given instead. After this, an opiate, e.g., a grain and a half of the solid London laudanum with an equal quantity of gum mastich, or 18 drops of the liquid laudanum out of an ounce of barley water with cinnamon. 7. For drink the white decoction and weak small beer ad libitum. The white decoction is an ounce of burnt hartshorn boiled in a pint of spring water, and sweetened with the best white sugar. 8. After the second purge, the patient may eat a little chicken. After the last, he may take 3 or 4 spoonfuls of canary wine, provided that the fever have abated, night and morning, and also after dinner. This he may do for some days. Age 16-9. In frenzies and around a coma, there is nothing like shaving the head. No blister, only a light cap. 10. If, as is often the case with hysterical females, after the repetition of the bleeding and purging, the fever still continues, provided that there be no signs of parapneumonia or of inflammation about the vital parts, a paregoric may be given every night, and antihysterical medicines 2 or 3 times a day. Chapter 6. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on infants suffering under the stationary fever. The treatment: apply 2 leeches behind the ears on each side. After this, lay a strong blister on the neck. Purge with the infusion of small beer and rhubarb. If after the purging, the fever intermit, administer the julep with Peruvian bark, as directed for infants, in Chapter 4 feet. Chapter 7. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the scarlet fever. Tuts attacks infants most, and that towards the end of summer. Shivers and chills at the commencement, but no great depression. The whole skin is marked with small red spots, more frequent, more diffused, and more red than in measles. These last 2 or 3 days. They then disappear, leaving the skin covered with brandy squamule as if powdered with meal. KK Hartshorn, Gascoigne's powder, 388, cochineal GRJ, white sugar 3, mix and make into a very fine powder. Divide into 12 papers. Take 1 every 6 hours. Wash down with 2 or 3 spoonfuls of EK black cherry water, aqua lactis alexiteria, AIZs, syrup of lemon juice, pound J mix, and make into a julep. Apply also a blister to the neck. Order 2, a paregoric of syrup of poppies to be taken every night. Purge when the symptoms have ceased. Chapter 8. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on pleurisy. Tuus is most prevalent between spring and autumn. It begins with chills and shivers. Thirst, heat, discomfort, and the other symptoms of fever follow. A few hours later, the patient is seized with a violent stabbing pain in the side, which spreads towards the shoulder blades, the spine, or the front of the chest. The cough is frequent and afflicting. The matter spit up is at first scanty and thin. As the disease advances, it becomes more copious, more concocted, and more mixed with bloody particles. As the cough, the spitting of blood, and the pain increase, and as the expectoration becomes freer, the fever abates. The bowels are sometimes loose, sometimes confined. The blood, when cooled, is like melted suet. 2 bleed from the arm of the side affected to 10 ounces. Sal prunella, 5J, syrup of violets, toju. Mix and make into a draught to be taken directly after the first bleeding. X sweet almonds blanched, V melon seeds, gourd seeds, A3. White poppy seeds, 50 ONOA, barley water, os rose water, 5 sugar candy, QS. Dia emulsio secundum artem, 4 ounces to be taken every 4 hours. Syrup of violets, syrup of maidenhair, A3, sugar candy, QS mix, and make into an apposum. Half a pint to be taken every day. KKO of sweet almonds, 3 syrup of violets, syrup of maidenhair, AA3, sugar candy, QS mix, and make into a linctus to be taken frequently. Oil of sweet almonds or fresh linseed oil may be taken. K oil of sweet almonds, oil of lilies, ointment of marshmallows, AA3, mix and make into a liniment to be rubbed in on the affected side night and morning. Lay a cabbage leaf over the part, 3 roll. Repeat the bleeding in the same quantity 3 times more, so as in all to make 4 days, as long as the pains and dyspnea continue. Chapter 9. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Bastard Peripneumony. 1. Tuish shows itself as winter approaches, often towards the end of it. At the first attack, the patient is hot and cold by turns. The least movement makes him giddy. The cheeks and eyes are inflamed. He coughs, and during the act, there is a racking pain of the head. He throws up what he drinks. The urine is thick and intensely red. His blood is the blood of pleurisy. He pants and gasps, the chest being meanwhile in pain. This disease differs from the dry asthma, in the latter being unaccompanied with fever. Such symptoms are always present here. Still, they are always milder than in true peripneumony. 2. Bleed to 11 ounces. Next day, order 9 in extract of cassia, 3 licorice, 5 edgy 4 fat figs, senna leaves, 3 igeric lozenges, 5 boil in a sufficient quantity of water damp beforehand. Strain and add manna, $J, salute of syrup of roses, GSS mix, and make into a potion. If he cannot take this, let him take 2 scruples of the pill, cock. Major instead, at 4 p.m. next day, bleed again to the same quantity. The day after purge again, repeat the purge every other day or at longer intervals, according as there is strength to bear it. If the symptoms still continue, bleed. Twice if necessary, only at an interval of some days, according to symptoms. Generally, however, 2 bleedings are enough. Meanwhile, during the days when no purgatives are given, the pectoral decoction, the linctus, and the oil of sweet almonds may be given according to the directions for pleurisy. Chapter 10. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Rheumatism. 1. Where nerve martek patients suffer from chills and shivers, and from all the signs and symptoms of fever. After a day or 2, sometimes sooner, a sharp pain, now in this, now in that joint, but most in the wrists, shoulders, and knees, shifts about, leaving redness and swelling in the different parts as it takes them in turn. The fever gradually abates whilst the pain remains. Sometimes, indeed, it abates even whilst the pain increases. In rheumatic lumbago, there was an intense pain in the lumbar regions, simulating nephritis, except that there is no sickness. The patient cannot lie down. He may spring from his bed, or he may sit erect upon it, moving his body backwards and forwards painfully. The blood is the blood of pleurisy. Bleed from the arm of the side affected to 10 ounces purslane water, lettuce water, AA-Zif, syrup of lemons, GSS, syrup of violets, 3 mix and make into agilup, to be taken ad libitum. 3. Prescribe the emulsion of the 4 cold seed. Apply to the part in pain a poultice of the finest white bread with milk and saffron. 4. Next day bleed to the same amount as before. Bleed again a day or 2 after. Bleed as often as 4 times, oftener if necessary, observing only that after the second, the intervals between the venisections be prolonged. 5. On the days when the bleeding is omitted, throw up an occasional clister of milk and sugar. 9. Common decoction for clisters, 1b, syrup of violets, brown sugar, AA-Zy mix, and make into a clister. 6. If the weakness of the patient will not allow him to be repeatedly bled, the treatment after the 2nd or 3rd venesection must be as follows. 7. Every other day the common purgative potion, until he recovers, and on the evenings of the same, the syrup of poppy paregoric must be given. 8 times. If these fail, and the patient be too weak for further evacuations, let him have recourse to the electuary and to the aqua antiscorbutica, as in scurvy. Such treatment being good for scorbutic rheumatism also. 9. With young persons and those who have not overindulged in wine, rheumatism may be dispelled simply by spare and very cooling diet, provided that it be moderately nourishing. This will often do as well as repeated bleedings which are but badly borne. E.g. 10. Let the patient live on nothing but whey for 4 days, afterwards taking, besides the whey, some fine wheaten bread once a day as his dinner, until he is thoroughly convalescent. During the last days he is allowed a little bread at supper. When the symptoms are giving way, he may take a little tender chicken boiled or some similar digestible food. Every 3rd day, however, he must be limited to the whey alone, and this until his strength has wholly returned. Chapter 11. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On erysipelatous fever, her whole surface, especially the face, swells, becomes painful, and is deep red. Thick pustules, small and becoming vesicular, then appear and spread over the head and forehead. The eyes are closed by the swelling. Chills and shivers and other signs of fever are present. In another form of the fever, supervening upon the free use of attenuant liquors, slight fever is present, with pustules resembling nettle stings, sometimes rising into vesicles, sometimes receding, concealing themselves under the skin like tubercles, itching exceedingly, and showing themselves most when scratched. There is a 3rd form. This is generally on the breast, where there is a broad blotch, scarcely rising above the skin, poriginous with yellow squamule. Whilst this lasts, the patient is well. As it goes off, he sickens a little. The urine is yellow and turbid. It yields to the same remedies as the pocky itch. Wine and digestible meat should form the diet. 2 bleed to 9 or 10 ounces. Next day take the common purgative potion. Marshmallow root, lily root, handful, mallow leaves, elder leaves, mullein leaves, chamomile flowers, melilot, St. John's wort tops, tops of lesser century, a handful, linseed fenugreek, thress, water QS boiled to 3 pints strain. Add when used spirits of wine, 33 tin. Apply linen rags soaked in this lotion and well squeezed out, hot, twice a day to the parts affected. Then anoint with spirits of wine, ossa, Venice treacle, 3 long pepper in powder, cloves in powder. Make into a mixture. Soak a piece of blotting paper in the same and apply to the parts affected. If the disease do not yield to the first bloodletting, repeat it. If it still continue, bleed to even the 4th time, with 1 day's interval between the bleedings. On the days when there is no bleeding, an enema of milk with syrup of violets, a cooling emulsion, and a cooling julep are to be prescribed. Chapter 12. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the pocky itch and such other inveterate eruptions of the skin, as do not yield to venesection and catharsis. K.K. Venice, treacle thress, egg electuary, niniju, Virginian snake root, finely powdered, Gerard 15th. Bezoar of the East, GRV, syrup of candied citron, QS make into a bolus, to be taken every night for 21 days. Wash down with plague water, aqua thyrecalis dilatetia, AA 3G. Syrup of cloves, 5G mix, and make into a julep. Every morning, a pint and a half of posset. So as for the patient to sweat afterwards for an hour. After this, if the pustules have not disappeared, the following ointment for the parts affected. K ointment of the sharp dock, 3 E.G. flowers, of sulfur, 3 iridium, MX make into a liniment. None of the aforesaid medicines should be used unless bleeding and purging have preceded. Chapter 13. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the quinsy. Quinsy comes on mostly between spring and summer. The access of the fever is followed by pain and inflammation of the fauces. Then follows swelling of the uvula, tonsils, and larynx, so that the patient can neither swallow nor breathe. Bleed freely from the arm. Touch the parts affected with honey of roses, with spirits of vitriol or spirits of sulfur, added in such a proportion as to give the greatest possible sharpness. Or else touch with spirits of vitriol alone. Then use the following gargle, not in the usual manner, but by keeping it in the mouth without any moving about until it gets warm. Then spit it out and repeat it again at various times. Tan water, red rose water, frog spawn water, as if the white of 3 eggs beaten up with water, crystalline sugar, 5 mix, and make into a gargle. The cooling emulsion prescribed for pleurisy. The next morning, unless the fever and pain in swallowing have remitted, the bleeding should be repeated and the purge put off till the next day. Otherwise, a lenitive cathartic should be taken. If the disease still continue, which, however, it very rarely does, repeat the bleeding and purging and apply a large and strong blister to the nape of the neck after the first bloodletting. Every morning, except on the days for the purging, a cooling, and emollient clister is to be injected. The patient must live on low diet and be out of his bed a few hours every day. In all these fevers, which I call intercurrent, as well as in those which are of the stationary kind, care must be taken that the patient keep out of bed a great part of the day, live upon barley broth, oatmeal gruel, and the like, taking well-hopped thin small beer, and milk and water for his ordinary drink. Chapter 14. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the measles. 2 measles generally attack children. On the first day, they have chills and shivers and are hot and cold in turns. On the second, they have the fever in full disquietude, thirst, want of appetite, a white, but not a dry, tongue, slight cough, heaviness of the head and eyes, and somnolence. The nose and eyes run continually, and this is the surest sign of measles. To this may be added sneezing, a swelling of the eyelids a little before the eruption, vomiting, diarrhea with green stools. These appear more especially during teething time. The symptoms increase till the 4th day. Then, or sometimes on the 5th, there appear on the face and forehead small red spots, very like the bites of fleas. These increase in number and cluster together, so as to mark the face with large red blotches. They are formed by small papules, so slightly elevated above the skin that their prominence can hardly be detected by the eye, but can just be felt by passing the fingers lightly along the skin. The spots take hold of the face first, from which they spread to the chest and belly, and afterwards to the legs and ankles. On these parts may be seen broad red macule on, but not above, the level of the skin. In measles, the eruption does not so thoroughly allay the other symptoms as in smallpox. There is, however, no vomiting after its appearance. Nevertheless, there is slight cough instead, which, with the fever and the difficulty of breathing, increases. There is also a running from the eyes, somnolence, and want of appetite. On the 6th day, or thereabouts, the forehead and face begin to grow rough as the pustules die off and as the skin breaks. Over the rest of the body, the blotches are both very broad and very red. About the 8th day, they disappear from the face and scarcely show on the rest of the body. On the 9th, there are none anywhere. On the face, however, and on the extremity sometimes over the trunk, they peel off in thin mealy squamule, at which time the fever, the difficulty of breathing, and the cough are aggravated. In adults and patients who have been under a hot regimen, they grow livid and afterwards black. K. pectoral decoction, OUS syrup of violets, syrup of maidenhair, AA zis mix, and make into an apostle. Of this take 3 or 4 ounces 3 or 4 times a day. AK oil of sweet almonds, 3 e.g. Syrup of violets, syrup of maidenhair, AA3. Finest white sugar, QS, mix and make into a linctus, to be taken often, especially when the cough is troublesome. Kiar black cherry water, IG syrup of poppies, Teredia. Mix and make into a draught, to be taken every night from the first onset of the disease until the patient recovers, the dose being increased or diminished according to his age. The patient must keep his bed for 2 days after the first eruption. 4. If, after the departure of the measles, fever, difficulty of breathing, and other symptoms like those of parapneumonia supervene, blood is to be taken from the arm freely, once, twice, or thrice, as the case may require, with 2 intervals. The pectoral decoction and the linctus must also be continued, or instead of the latter, the oil of sweet almonds alone. About the 12th day from the invasion, the patient may be moderately purged. 5. The diarrhea which follows measles is cured by bleed engine. Chapter 15. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on smallpox 1 thorax, is either distinct or confluent. In the dystonet smallpox, there are chills and shivers, intense heat, violent pain of the head and back, inclination to vomit, a great tendency to sweat, a sign which is commonest in adults, and one from which we may infer that the disease will not be confluent. Pain at the pit of the stomach when pressed by the hand, stupor, drowsiness. And at tea times, especially in infants, epileptic fits. With these, a fit is so sure sign of smallpox that if, after teething, they have one, you may predict variola, so much so that a fit overnight will be followed by the eruption next morning. This, however, will be generally mild and in no wise confluent. 2. On the 4th day, inclusive from the attack, sometimes later, rarely earlier, the rash breaks out, at which time the other symptoms either abate or disappear. In the eruption itself, the first thing that appears is reddish pustules, like the pricks of the finest needles spread irregularly over the face, the neck, the breast, and the whole body. Then comes pain about the jaws, which increases as the pustules rise. 3. About the 8th day from the first attack, the inner spaces between the pustules, which were at first white, begin to look red, to swell, and to give a painful feeling of tension. The eyelids become puffed like a bladder and close the eyes. Next to the face, the hands take on and swell, and the fingers become stretched. The pustules of the face, which were before smooth and red, now appear rough and whitish, the first sign of maturation. Besides this, they give out a yellowish juice, not unlike the color of the honeycomb. The inflammation of the hands and feet, which is now at its height, exhibits between the pustules a florid color, like that of a damask rose. And the milder the disease, the more truly is this the exact color, both of the pustules themselves and of the inner spaces between them. The pustules of the face become rougher and yellower according to the degree of maturation, those of the hands and the rest of the body being less rough and more white. 4. On the 11th day, the swelling and inflammation of the face go down, and the pustules, which have now attained the proper maturity and size, that of a largish pea, dry and fall off, and on the 14th or 15th day go off altogether. On the hands, however, the eruption is more obstinate, the pustules remaining white and fresh for a day or two longer than those of the rest of the body. At length, however, they break. Now those of all the other parts desquamate, whilst the desquamation of the face one succeeded by brandy scales and pitting. 5. Throughout the disease, the bowels are either wholly bound or costive. The majority of those who die on the 8th day of the discrete and the 11th of the confluent smallpox. In the former case, from the effects of the sweats, which have been forced by a hot regimen and cordials, the face, on the day aforesaid, which ought properly to be swollen and inflamed in the inner spaces between the pustules, becomes pale and flaccid, the pustules themselves being red and elevated, and remaining so even after the death of the patient. The sweat, too, which thus far had flowed freely, now stops suddenly. The patient, meanwhile, is taken with frenzy, anxiety, restlessness, and general disorder. He then passes his urine frequently and sparingly, and lastly, a very few hours after, dies. 6. In the confluent sort, the symptoms are the same, but worse. The tendency to sweat, however, is less. Diarrhea sometimes precedes the eruption, and it may continue for a day or two after it. This is rare in the discrete sort. On the 3rd day, or sooner, rarely later, the eruption breaks out, and the earlier it does so, the more likely is it to be confluent. At times the eruption is delayed till the 4th or 5th day on account of some severe symptom, such as, for instance, sharp pain in the loins like that of nephritis, sharp pain in the side like that of pleurisy, or sharp pain in the limbs like that of rheumatism, along with which there may be great uneasiness at the stomach and vomiting. In confluent smallpox, the eruption has less effect upon the other symptoms than in the discrete. Instead of being allayed by it, the fever and the other ailments become worse for some days after its appearance, this being sometimes that of erysipelas, sometimes that of measles. From both these, however, it differs in point of time. As the disease goes on, The pustules do not so much rise to any notable height as run together, especially in the face, which they cover as with one large red vesicle, and which they raise to a swelling earlier than is the case with the discrete sort. Afterwards, they become glued to the face, like a white pellicle, never, however, rising much above the level of the skin. 7. After the 8th day, the white pellicle grows rougher and rougher, darker and darker. The pain of the skin becomes more acute, and in the more violent forms of the disease, the desquamation is delayed until the 20th day. It then takes place in broad famine. The more the pustules approach a brown hue, the worse they are, and the slower they will go off, whereas the yellower they are, the better. They are also the more likely not to flux, as well as to disappear. 8. When the cuticle first falls off, there is no roughness of the face. Soon afterwards, however, there appear branny squamule of an exceedingly corrosive character, which leave pittings and often scars. Sometimes even the back and shoulders are peeled of their cuticle. The danger of the disease is to be calculated by the amount of pustules on the face. Those of the hands and feet are the largest. The farther you find them from the extremities, the smaller they are. 9. In adults, salvation, in infants, diarrhea are the usual, though not the universal, concomitants of confluent smallpox. The petialism sometimes begins as the eruption breaks out, sometimes 2 or 3 days after, when the patient spits up a thin matter which, on the 11th day, becomes viscid and is hawked up with great difficulty. The patient is thirsty, hoarse, drowsy, and overpowered by stupor. He coughs when he drinks, and the liquid returns through his nostrils. The salivation now for the most part ceases, and unless the swelling of the face and hands, which, although it should, according to the nature of the disease, remit a little, will not wholly go down until a day or 2 later, by showing itself more notably or by continuing longer, make up for what is lost in the petialism. The patient will die. Now, diarrhea does not begin so early with infants as petialism does with adults. 10 in each sort of smallpox, there is fever from the first attack until the eruption. It then abates so as to allow of the ripening of the pustules. When this is over, it ceases. From bad regimen, anomalous symptoms supervene symptoms such as flaccidity and sinking in of the pustules, brain fever, coma, purple spots interspersed among the pustules, with smaller and sunken black spots in their center, bloody urine, and bloody sputa at the beginning of the disease. Lastly, suppression of the urine. 11. The period of separation is the first 3 or 4 days, and it is accompanied with febrile ebullition. The period of expulsion is the remaining time of the disease. This takes place by means of small abscesses in the flesh. 12. The day of the greatest danger is the 11th from the first attack. This is the case when the disease is not remarkably crude and when its violence is average. When it is very crude, the day of peril is the 14th. When crude to the highest degree, the 17th. In some few cases, the patient lives until the 21st. Moreover, during all the days between the 11th and 17th, there is an increase of fever as evening approaches. 13. Bleed on any of the first 3 days from the invasion to 9 or 10 ounces, and afterwards give a vomit of 1 ounce or 1.5 ounces of the infusion of the crocus metalloil. 14. During these first few days, the blood may be diluted by allowing the patient thin small beer with a little spirits of vitriol until the full eruption of the pustules. 15. When the eruption is complete, which is generally the case on the 6th day from the invasion, 1 ounce of syrup of poppies may be given in the afternoon, to be repeated every night until the 10th day. Then increase it if the disease be confluent to 1.5 ounces. Continue this 1 ounce in the morning and 1.5 ounces in the evening until convalescence. 16. If the syrup of poppies disagree, the liquid laudanum may be substituted, viz. 18 drops for 1 ounce of the syrup and 20 for 1.5 ounces. Meanwhile, this must be observed. If the paregoric, which is thus given twice every day, be unable to restrain the orgasm, a common occurrence in pox that is remarkably confluent, it must be given every 8 hours or oftener if need be. 17. For the discrete smallpox of paregoric at night only, in a moderate dose, after the eruption has become complete, is sufficient. 18. Be the smallpox of whatever sort it may, and be its stage what it may, if frenzy supervened, the inordinate movement of the spirits must be checked. so that if one dose of the paregoric fail, another and another must be given, until the tumult be wholly allayed. Between each, however, there must be time enough allowed to let us see what one dose does before another is given. 19. For suppression of the urine, the patient must get out of bed and walk about the room. 20. If the saliva be too viscid to spit up, a gargle must be given through a syringe. It should be made of thin, small beer or barley water with the honey of roses or Ecale umbark 5a licorice root, raisins, red rose leaves, 2 handful, water, boiled down to Austria. Dissolve in the strained liquor simple oxymol honey of roses, AA3G mix, and make into gargle. Tooth the blister be needful, it should be large, and it should be laid on to the nape of the neck the night before the great eresis of the disease. Soon, too, after the exhibition of the paregoric and onion, may be laid to the soles of the feet, which should be renewed every day from the 8th day until the end of the disease. 22.2. If an infant, who has got through teething, be suddenly seized with spasm, we must consider that this may possibly be an effort of nature, whereby she attempts to throw out upon the surface smallpox, measles, or scarlatina, as the case may be. In this case, put the patient to bed at once, blister his neck, and give a cordial with a little paregoric, e.g. for a boy 3 years old, 5 drops of liquid laudanum and 1 spoonful of plague water, 33, if on the 11th day. Or on any day subsequent to the 11th, the secondary fever, with its accompanying restlessness, disquiet, and other symptoms be carried to such a degree as not to be checked by paregories of any kind, and if, in consequence, death impend. Blood must be drawn directly, and that to the amount required, i.e. to 12 ounces or thereabouts. This may be repeated once or twice during the following days, if the symptoms demand it, but not otherwise. Moreover, a mild purge may be given on the 13th day, not before, or on any day after, provided that bleeding have preceded. The purge may be an ounce of lenitive electuary dissolved in 4 ounces of succory water, or the aqua lactis alloteria. However, neither bleeding nor purging forbids paregorics, which may be given to their full amount, and in their due frequency, notwithstanding the evacuations aforesaid. Paregorics are our sheet anchors. 24. When the pustules have completely dried up, the face may be anointed with equal parts of oil of sweet almonds and pomatum for 2 days, not longer. 25 on the 20th day after the attack. Bleed from the arm. The next day, purge. Repeat this every other day until the 3rd time. 26. In respect to regimen, the patient must be kept out of bed until the 6th day from the first attack. He must then keep in bed till the 17th. His bedclothes must be as usual. 27. His diet must be oatmeal gruel, barley broth, roasted apples, and thin small beer. And after the 11th day, 4 or 5 spoonfuls of sherry wine may be given twice a day, provided that the patient wish it. 38. If the swelling of dulles do not abate under the aforesaid evacuations, it was easily got rid of by means of a fomentation of mallow leaves, mullein leaves, elder leaves, and laurel leaves, with flowers of the chamomile and the melilot boiled in milk. 39. If, during the first days, the patient suffer from spitting of blood, or if he pass bloody urine, the powder and tincture of C. 48 must be given every 6 hours until these symptoms wholly disappear. Then a full paregoric may be administered. Chapter 16. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on St. Vitus's Dance. Tuus is a kind of convulsion which attacks boys and girls from the 10th year to the time of puberty. It first shows itself by limping or unsteadiness in one of the legs which the patient drags. The hand cannot be steady for a moment. It passes from one position to another by a convulsive movement, however much the patient may strive to the contrary. Before he can raise a cup to his lips, he makes as many gesticulations as a mountebank, since he does not move it in a straight line, but has his hand drawn aside by spasm, until by some good fortune he brings it at last to his mouth. He then gulps it off at once, so suddenly and so greedily as to look as if he were trying to amuse the lookers-on. 2 bleed from the arm to 8 ounces, more or less, according to age. 3. The next day give half, more or less as the age of the patient requires it, of the common potion. At evening the full, well-on black cherry water, 2G, Aqua Epileptica Langi, 51G, Venice Treacle 9G, Liquid Laudanum, MJV. Make into a draft. Repeat the cathartic every other day 3 times, and the paregoric on the same nights. 4. Blood must again be drawn the next day, and the catharsis repeated. And so, bleeding and purging must alternate until the 3rd or 4th time, provided only that there be sufficient time between the alternate evacuations to ensure the patient against danger. 9. On the days when there is no purging or conserve of Roman wormwood, conserve of orange peel, A-A-Toji, conserve of rosemary, ZSES, Venice treacle, old, candied nutmeg, A-A-Thri, candied ginger, 5G, syrup of lemon juice, QS, make into an electuary of which a portion the size of a nutmeg is to be taken every morning, and at 5 p.m. wash down with 5 spoonfuls of the following wine: K. peony root, elecampane, masterwort, angelica A3, rue leaves, sage, bitoni, germander, white horehound, tops of lesser centauri, of each a handful, juniper berries, 3 of G peel of 2 oranges. Slice and steep in 6 pints of cold canary wine, strain, and lay by for use. If I ubo, oe caru water, zif, aqua epileptica langiae, compound bryony water. A pound J syrup of peony, 5 of your mix and make into a julep, of which 4 spoonfuls may be taken every night at bedtime, with the addition of 8 drops of spirits of hartshorn. 6. Apply to the sole of the foot the emplastrum e carana 7 and 7. To guard against a relapse, bleed and purge for a few days, that time next year, or a little earlier. 8. It is probable that this treatment may also cure the epilepsy of adults, but I have not tried. In adults, however, the bleeding and purging should be freer, since St. Vitus's dance is a disease of tender years. Chapter 17. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, of Apoplexy. 1. Prorab sleep, utter loss of sense and motion, with the exception of that necessary for respiration. This is labored and stertorous. Bleed from the arm to 12 ounces as soon as possible. Then from the jugular veins to 8 ounces. Then give an emetic consisting of 1.5 ounces or 2 ounces of the crock, Met 3. Apply a large and strong blister to the nape of the neck. Apply rectified spirits of sal ammoniac to the nostrils. Whilst this is done, the patient must sit upright in his bed with but few bedclothes. 4. When the vomiting is over, give at times 3 or 4 spoonfuls of the following julep: compound bryony water, aqua epileptica longii, AA3. Spirits of hartshorn, crystalline sugar, QS, make into a julep. Instead of this, a single spoonful of compound spirits of lavender may be given twice or thrice during the fit, at intervals of half an hour. 5. Care must be taken not to follow the usual custom of giving over-hot and over-frequent cordials. Whatever may be their specific virtues, they do more harm than good, since they are likely to draw forth the humors and so to increase the disease. The same arises from too many bedclothes. When the fit is over, a relapse may be guarded against biquietar pil coach major 9G, to be taken every 3rd day at 4 p.m. Sleep after taking them. Continue to the 6th time. Conserve of rosemary, A3. Conserve of orange peel, 5 edge. Candied nutmeg, candied ginger, L-azis. Venice treacle, old, 5 EGA. Powder of the electuarium de ambre. Powder of the electuarium de amboschi dulcis. AF5. S. Make into an opiate. Take a portion the size of a chestnut night and morning. Wash down with 2 spoonfuls of the aqua epileptica longii. Chique ambergris 38. Distilled oil of aniseed. Oil of cinnamon. Oil of nutmeg. Sugar dissolved in 4 ounces of orange flower water. Make into lozenges secundum artem, to be taken ad libitum. All generous drinks are to be eschewed. The diet must be oatmeal gruel, barley broth, chicken broth, and occasionally, especially between purging times, the flesh of chickens, lamb, or other similarly digestible elements. Chapter 18. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2 of Ophthalmia. Tuts is manifest from the inflammation of the eyes. Bleed to 10 ounces. Next day, order the common purgative potion. Repeat this twice at intervals of 2 days. On the nights of the same, give a paregoric consisting of an ounce of syrup of poppies. On the days when there is no purging, the 10 must take 3 or 4 times a day 4 ounces of the emulsion of the greater cold seeds. K. Plantain water, red rose water, frog spawn water, AA3. Prepared tutty, 3J, make into an eye wash, of which pour a few drops twice a day into the eye, but not previous to the first pert. If the disease do not yield to these remedies, repeat the venesection once or twice, especially if the blood be the blood of pleurisy, also the catharsis. The patient must abstain from wine and all generous beverages, also from all indigestible and salt meats. On the days between the purges he must drink boiled whey. Observe ophthalmia may often resist both bleeding and purging, however often repeated. In this case, give a paregoric of an ounce of syrup of poppies each night. This will effect a cure single-handed. Chapter 19. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Procedentio uri, Chakey oak bark, e.g. boil, in 4 pints of spring water down to 2 cups. Towards the end of the boiling, add bruised pomegranate bark, pound J, red roses, pomegranate flowers. Add a handful, of red wine a pint. Strain and keep as a fomentation, to be applied to the part affected on a linen rag every morning, 2 hours before rising, and at night after going to bed until the symptoms entirely go off. Chapter 20, The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on a nephritic paroxysm. Here we find a fixed pain in the region of the loins, bloody urine, the excretion of small calculi or gravel, numbness of the leg, on the side of the kidney affected, retraction of the testicle, on the same side, nausea and vomiting. The pain of colic is in many points the pain of nephritis. In many it differs, as may be seen below. If the patient be of a sanguine temperament, bleed on the side of the kidney affected to 10 ounces. Then order a gallon of posset in which 2 ounces of marshmallows have been boiled, to be taken as quickly as possible. Follow this up with the following clister: R. Marshmallow root, lily root, AA, pound J, mallow leaves, pellitory, bear's breech, chamomile flowers. AA, a handful. Linseed, fenugreek, ASESs. Water, QS, boil down to half a pint mix, and make into an enema. After the emetic and the clister have been thrown up again, a full and sufficient dose of liquid laudanum should be given, or else 15 or 16 grains of Matthew's pills. With old men, however, and with constitutions broken down by long disease, and with old women subject to the vapors, especially if, at the beginning of the disease, they have passed a black and sandy urine, the bleeding may be omitted. In respect, however, to the other matters, the method is the same in all cases alike. Chapter 23. Chapter 21. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on bloody urine from a calculus impacted in the kidney. 2 patient must take on some stated day of the week 2 ounces and a half of manna dissolved in 2 pints of whey. Sometimes a free draught of small beer ones is advantageous when the calculus is large. The pain is dull and heavy, not easily increased, and sufficiently tolerable. Nor is it accompanied by a nephritic paroxysm. The patient cannot freely take to mineral waters unless he previously have ascertained whether or not the calculus is too large to pass through the ureters. This can be ascertained as a certainty by one means only. 1. By considering whether the patient have at any time before suffered from a nephritic paroxysm, accompanied with its usual severe pain in each kidney propagated along the ducts of the ureters, and excessive vomiting. If so, is certain that instead of a single large stone in the pelvis, there is a mass of small ones, one of which at a time finds its way into the ureter, and causes a fit which lasts until the stone is pushed forward into the bladder. When this is the case, nothing is more efficacious than the use of Chalabi waters. If, however, the patient had never been previously afflicted, and the stone be too large to pass along the ureters, Chalabiates are to be avoided. Chapter 22. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2 on dysentery, diarrhea, and gripes. Curls and shivers, followed by a heat of the whole body. Soon afterwards, gripings of the belly and frequent slimy, sometimes stercuous stools. Great torture and descent of the bowel at every motion. Streaks of blood in stools generally, but not always. Sometimes none throughout. As the disease advances, pure blood is passed, and the bowels are affected with incurable gangrene. If the patient be in the prime of life or have heated himself with cordials, there is much fever. The tongue is whitish, with a thick fur, sometimes black and dry. The strength is exhausted, the spirits low. There are afts on the lining of the mouth and throat, especially when the peccant matter has been kept in by the improper use of astringents, and the due evacuation by means of catharsis has not been completed. At times, though the fever be absent, the gripes lead the way, and the other symptoms follow. 2. In diarrhea, the excrementitious waters are voided without blood and without inflammation of the bowels. In tenesmus there is the constant wish to stool, when nothing but scanty bloody mucus, or even purulent matters are voided. 4. Bleed at once, and give a paregoric the same night. Next morning the common purgative potion. Repeat the 2 on alternate days, twice. A paregoric after each when the catharsis is over. On days when there is no purging, the same both morning and evening. 5. After the first bleeding and purge. The following must be given throughout the disease: black cherry water, strawberry water, ia3, plague water, aquascordi comp, barley water, with cinnamon as 7%, prepared pearls, 3 as crystalline sugar, QRQS, damask rose water, ZSSES to taste. Mix and make into a julep, of which 4 or 5 spoonfuls are to be taken when the patient feels weak, or ad libitum. 6. The patient's drink must be boiled milk with 3 parts water, or the white decoction, as he calls in hartshorn, white breadcrumbs, AA3G. Boil in 3 pints of spring water to 2:7, with white sugar QS7. If the weakness require it, 2 pints of spring water boiled with half a pint of Canary wine and cooled may be taken as a drink. After the 2nd or 3rd purging, the cure has to be effected by laudanum, taken twice or thrice a day, except that, at times, an enema of milk from the cow, half a pint, and Venice treacle, 1.5 ounces, may be thrown in. This greatly improves the evacuations. 9. When the flux rises only to the height of a diarrhea, the bleeding and purging may be omitted, and the following bolus given every morning and evening. Powdered rhubarb thress, more or less according to the strength of the patient. Diascordium S, make into a bolus, add 2 drops of the essential oil of cinnamon. 10. The next night, a paregoric of 14 drops of liquid laudanum and of barley water with cinnamon may be given, 1L. When there are dry gripes without stools, the bowels must be washed out by wiry drunk cool and thrown up as a clister warm. In cholera, the same must be done with chicken broth or milk with beer, 12. If this disease continue and fix upon the rectum, so that there is constant desire to stool, a restorative diet and cordial drinks must be resorted to. As strength returns, the tarts 13. If a dysentery have been imperfectly cured, the pains may stand over for many years. In this case, bleeding will restore the patient to his former health, 14. In constitutions that are unfavorable to the disease, the evacuations may be omitted, and the complaint be cured by laudanum alone. This is to be given night and morning until all the symptoms have gone. It may be given, if needed, even 3 times in the 24 hours. Chapter 23. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Bilious Colic 1, Terrible Pain in the Bowels. The fever that ends in this disease distresses the patient for some hours. The pain is either as if the body were drawn by a bandage, or else a boring pain as if pierced with an auger. This at times remits, at times becomes exacerbated. At first, it is not so certainly fixed to a certain spot, nor yet is the vomiting so frequent, nor yet do the bowels so obstinately resist the effect of purgatives. However, as the pain increases, the more it fixes itself to a point, the more frequent is the tendency to vomit, the more obstinate the constipation. At length it becomes pachydolarliaca. It is distinguished from nephritis by the following signs. Nephritis is felt in the region of the kidneys, along the line of the ureters, and in the testicle. Colic is either unfixed or else limited like a girdle to the middle belly. 2D colic is increased by taking food. Nephritis is rather relieved. In colic, both stools and vomits relieve more than in nephritis. Fourth. In nephritis, the urine runs at first clear and thin. Afterwards, there is a settling. Lastly, gravel appears. In colic, the urine is thick from the beginning, bleed freely, and 3 or 4 hours after, give an anodyne. Next day, purge with the lenitive electuary. Continue this every other day until the third time. If the disease have arisen from the over-free use of the fruits of the season, or from any other imprudence in food, the stomach must be washed out at once by a large draught of milk with beer. The next day, a vein must be opened, and the method aforesaid be proceeded with. When this disease has been unskillfully treated, so as to continue to distress the patient, and almost wear him out, the free use of either plague water, aqua mirabilis, or some similar drink that he has hacked during health, will do so much good as to surpass our most favorable expectations. Chapter 24 Viax on Cholera Morbus. Al Tuts is limited to the month of August, or to the first week or two of September. Another similar but different disease appears at any time of the year, originating in gluttony or overdrinking, and is cured in the same way. Violent vomiting, accompanied by the dejection of depraved humors, difficulty in passing them. Vehement pain, inflation and dissension of the bowels, heartburn, thirst, quick, frequent, small and unequal pulse, heat and anxiety, nausea, sweat, cramps of the legs and arms, faintings and coldness of the extremities, constitutes the true cholera, and it kills within 24 hours. 2 boil a tender chicken in 3 pints of spring water, so that the liquor be but just flavored by the meat. Of this decoction, or if it cannot be procured of posset drink, the patient must take several cupfuls warm. He must use the same as a clyster as well. To these, the draughts and clyster, an ounce of the syrups of lettuce, violets, purslane, waterley, or some similar adjunct may be added. 3. This takes 3 or 4 hours. When finished, a paragor complete the cure. 4. If the physician be not called in before the patient has become so exhausted from the continued vomiting and purging that his extremities have become cold, recourse must be had to liquid laudanum, and that in considerable doses, each 25 drops to an ounce of cinnamon water, even when the symptoms have ceased. This must be repeated night and morning, though in a smaller dose, until the patient wholly recover his original strength. 5. There is a sort of cholera morbus, exceedingly fatal to infants. It arises either from overfeeding or from teething. 6. Here their tender age forbids the use of free diluent drinks, and, still more, the disturbance of the humors that would be affected by catharsis. Hence the cure must be attempted by laudanum alone, i.e., with 2, 3, 4 or more drops according to the age of the child, taken out of a spoonful of small beer or some other appropriate liquor, and repeated as the case requires. Chapter 24 The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On colica pictinum tuus is a sort of colic, which is wont to degenerate into palsy, depriving the patient of the use both of his hands and feet, a fact noted by Riverius in his chapter on palsy, and which is extremely common in the West Indies, where it destroys many persons. Balsam of Peru, in large and frequent doses, one's the cure for the pain. 20, 30, or even 40 minims dropped upon a lump of fine white sugar should be given twice or thrice a day. This, however, will not cure the palsy. Chapter 25 The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the Iliac Passion, warned Turton. 2. Peristaltic motion of the intestines is reversed, so that purges and clysters are thrown up like emeties, and the feces of the bowel are passed through the mouth and throat. 9. Bleed to 9 or 10 ounces from the right arm. After a few hours, give RK scaminy, GIGGI, or if not to be had, calomel 3J mix, and make into a powder to be taken out of a spoonful of milk from the cow. Wash down with a spoonful or 2 of the same. 3. Or if the form of a pill be preferable, pili duobus tres calomel, ni each balsam of Peru, QS making of 4 pills, to be taken out of a spoonful of syrup of violets. 4. If, however, the patient reject this by the mouth, 25 drops of the liquid laudanum in half an ounce of strong. Praxis medica, I5G cinnamon water must be given directly. When this has allayed the vomiting and the pains of the belly, the aforesaid purge must be repeated. If, however, the virtue of the anodynes be wholly thrown away, so that the pain and vomiting return and the cathartic remain in the body, we must return to the paregoric already described, which must be repeated every 4th or 6th hour, until the motion of the intestines be perfectly quieted. The purge will then act naturally, i.e., will produce stools. 5. It will also be well, an hour or 2 after the bleeding, to throw up one of the stronger clysters, e.g. tobacco smoke forced up the bowel through a pipe from a large bladder. This may be repeated after a few hours, unless the passage downwards be properly opened. 6. When the action of the purge has ceased, the following must be taken. Wheat strong cinnamon water. 3. Liquid laudanum. P mix. Mix and make into a draught. This is to be repeated twice, thrice, or oftener during the day, until the pain and vomiting have wholly ceased. Even when these symptoms have departed, the cure will be confirmed by taking the same paregoric in a smaller dose at bedtime. Chapter 26. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2 on Immoderate Menstrual Flow. Too natural flow in the menses would fill a vessel the size of a goose's egg. When inordinate, there is difficulty, weakness, anorexia, cachexia, cadaverous complexion, and swelling of the feet. Bleed from the arm to 8 ounces. Next morning, give the common purging potion. Repeat this twice every other day. Each night after the purging, give a paregoric of the syrup of poppies. On the days when there is no purging, give lozenges of Pterolemnia thrias, pomegranate bark, red coral, prepared, Bolar armeniac, aadiege, bloodstone, dragon blood. Make into an electuary, of which a portion, the size of a large nutmeg, is to be taken every morning and every day at 5 p.m. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of the following julep, TK oakbud water, plantain water, AA3 cinnamon water with barley, syrup of dried roses, AA pound, J spirits of vitriol, QS to give an agreeable acidity, TK plantain leaves, nettle leaves, AAQ, S bruise, squeeze, and clarify. Of this, take 4 or 5 spoonfuls frequently ad libitum. After the first purging, apply the following plaster to the lumbar region. Chior emplastrum dominio emplastrum ad hernium, emplastrum ad hernium, AAA equal part. Spread on a leather skin and apply as a plaster to the loins. Chapter 27. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On hysterical colic, terrors is a remarkable and common symptom of the hysterical affection as much as a separate disease. It consists of agonizing pain at the pit of the stomach, accompanied by the vomiting of green matters. First, in order that the mass of vicious humors within the stomach may not impede the efficacy of a paregoric, a great quantity of posset drink should be taken first. This will be rejected by vomiting, as much as a gallon and a half may be given. When the vomiting is over, 25 drops of liquid laudanum must be given in an ounce of strong cinnamon water, of plague water, or of any similar vehicle. 3. This paregoric must be continued and repeated until every symptom has departed, a due time between each dose being allowed, in order that the effects of one may be seen before we give another. 4. If the patient be of a sanguine temperament, and it be the first attack, blood may be taken from the arm before the emetic is given. 5. Clavus hystericus is similarly treated. If, however, the hysteric colic be obstinate and come on in paroxysms, we must, then in the intervals between, use the following. Ixidawary, very finely powdered. 3. Syrup of candied citron, QS, make into a bolus, to be taken morning and evening for 30 days. Wash down with Zedawary, GSS, canary wine, Ziv, steep for 12 hours in the cool infusion. strain, and keep for use. Or the balsam of Peru, as in colica pictinum, may be used. 6. What applies to hysterical colic applies also to the colic of hypochondriasis. A fact to be noted. Each ailment requires us to try one medicine after another until we hit upon the one to which the disease gives way. Generally, however, chalybeates do great good. 7. Colic, both with hysteria and hypochondriasis, often ends in jaundice. This, however, goes off of itself. If not, give EK madder root, turmeric, a pound J, greater celandine tops of the lesser centauri, a handful. Boil in equal parts of Rhenish wine and spring water down to 2 pints. Dissolve in the strained liquor syrup of the 5 roots, Zy mix, and make into an apposum, of which half a pint is to be taken warm morning and evening until convalescence. Chapter 28. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on jaundice not following colic. Tub whole body, especially the whites of the eyes, is yellow. Everything also seems yellow to the patient. Itching, lassitude, and indisposition to move. A bitter taste in the mouth, bilious vomiting at times, hicco, white stools, deep yellow urine, which stains linen when dipped into it of the same color. Order the common purgative potion. Go on with the following giving every 4th day. The purge aforesaid. KK conserve of Roman wormwood, conserve of orange peel, AA pound J, candied angelica, candied nutmeg, compounder of cuckoo pint, iron prepared with vinegar, AAZSS, extract of the lesser centauri, extract of gentian, cream of tartar, AA 3-iron, saffron finely powdered. Thrust syrup of the 5 roots, QS make into an electuary. Of this take a portion the size of a large nutmeg every morning, and every day at 5 p.m. Wash down the morning draught with 4 pints of purgative mineral waters, the evening one with half a pint of the apposum ordered for hysterical colic. Instead of the electuary, the chalybeate pills may be taken. If signs of dropsy appear, the apposum must be taken after each bolus evenings and mornings as well. If the disease still continue, recourse must be had to chalybeate waters drunk from the spring. Chapter 29. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, to prevent abortion. The same treatment as for an immoderate flow of the menses, except that the purging and juices must be omitted. Chapter 30. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on an immoderate flow of the lochia. Tud natural lochial discharge consists of 3 elements. LS pure blood which flows for the first 3 days, 2 deer, a watery blood like the washings of meat, lasting the next 4 days, 9. A viscid and mucilaginous discharge, mixed with but little or no blood, beginning about the 5th or 7th day, and lasting till the end of the month. That the flow is too great is ascertained from the following signs: loss of strength, fainting, a grumous character of the blood, dislike to food, pain in the hypochondries, tension of the belly, weak and frequent pulse, mistiness of vision, singing in the ears and convulsions. The diet must be restorative, to which the following drink must be added. Plantain water, red wine, AIOJ. Boil down to 2/3, sweeten with the finest sugar, QS set to cool. Of this, take half a pint twice or thrice a day. Meanwhile, some hysterical julep, which must, however, be of the mild sort, may be given occasionally, and the following plug applied to the nostrils: Chichi galbanum, asafoetida, castor, AA3S, volatile salts of ambergris. Mix and make into a plug, X spirits of sal ammoniac, 5-AG to be frequently smelt. 218. Chapter 31. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, Suppression of the Lochia. 2 belly swells. There is a heavy bearing down pain in the lower belly, the groins and loins. The face becomes red, the respiration difficult, the eyes wild. There are chills and fever, faintings, cold sweats, a sense of heat and throbbing in the womb, palsy of the lower limbs, and at times epilepsy. Order the patient to bed at once and apply to the navel an hysterical plaster. Give then the following electuary: K conserve of Roman wormwood, conserve of rue AA pound J, myrrh, lauryl lozenges, 5 urge castor, saffron, sal volatile, sal ammoniac, asafoetida AA 585, syrup of the 5 roots, QSE. Make into an electuary. Of this, take a piece the size of a nutmeg every 4 hours. Wash down with 4 or 5 spoonfuls of the following julep Kiaru water Ziv, compound briny water 2 or take a scruple of the mere lozenges every 4 hours. If the whole of the aforesaid medicines have been taken, and the lochia still continues suppressed, laudanum must be given once at least, either as 14 drops of liquid laudanum out of the compound briny water, or as 1.5 grains of the solid laudanum made into a pill with 10 grains of asafoetida. If all these means fail, a cluster of sugar and milk must be thrown up once at least. Chapter 32. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2 on dropsy, all 2-finger, if pressed upon the lower part of the legs, will leave a mark, especially towards evening. In the morning, the impression is less distinct. This is the first sign of the disease, especially if there be difficulty of breathing besides. Not infrequently, however, pregnant women and women with whom the menstruation has ceased, as well as men suddenly freed from inveterate asthma, have swellings of the same sort. When the feet and legs are stretched to their utmost, the waters rush into the abdomen, and this they gradually distend to its full capacity. At length they reach the nobler viscera, and the patient dies. In proportion as the parts occupied by the disease increase, the rest of the body loses flesh, whilst dyspnea, scantiness of the urine, and intense thirst supervene. Dropsy attacks men in the decline of life, women when they become past childbearing. 2. The curative indications are directed, first, to the evacuation of the waters, next, to the restoration of the strength of the blood, so as to guard against a fresh generation of the fluid. K. white wine, Ziv, jalap, finely powdered, 5G ginger, powdered, 3x syrup of buckthorn, mix and make into a potion, to be taken the first thing in the morning, and to be repeated every other day, according to the strength of the patient, until the parts affected have gone down. E. Cameron ZSES, Senna 5 rhubarb fivice, water QS boil to 3 ounces. Strain and dissolve in the strained liquor manna, solutive syrup of roses, A. pound J, syrup of buckthorn, thress, rose juice, electorate, 3G mix, and make into a potion. To be taken as above, E.K. Pelul e duobus, Nash elaterium, chemical oil of cloves, Tai-G. Make into 3 pills, to be taken the first thing in the morning, and to be repeated if necessary. White wine, suckery water, Aazis, syrup of buckthorn, ECSS mix, and make into a potion, to be taken as above. Chike inner bark of the elder, scrape from the wood. 3 handfuls, boil in equal parts of milk and water from 2 pints to 1. Take 1/2 of the strained liquor every morning and the other every evening till recovery. But this remedy, except in bodies very easily moved, does but little good. 3. Concerning the use of cathartics in this disease, these 3 points must be noted. 4. First, whether the patient's body is acted upon by etherdes easily or with difficulty. In the former case, an ounce of the syrup of buckthorn will BRMG away abundance of the waters. In the latter, the strongest of the above-named purgatives will scarcely succeed. 5. Secondly, all purges which act but slowly do more harm than good. Hence, a dose a little too strong is better than one a little too weak. 6. Thirdly, the waters should be drawn off as quickly as the strength of the patient will bear, lest, by allowing overlong intervals between the purges, they accumulate. 7. There are, however, cases where all purgatives, whatever, are out of place. This is when the patient is weak or a female subject to vapors. In such cases, the cure is to be entrusted to diuretics alone, of which the most potent are the lixiviated salts, as ekbroom ashes, IBJ steep, in a cold infusion of 4 pints of Rhenish wine, strained through a filter, 3 ounces to be taken every morning, evening, and at 5 p.m., until the liquor be finished. 8. When the water is thoroughly evacuated, warm corroborants are to be used, as Cheke radish root, garden scurvy grass, common mugwort, sage, lesser centauri, broom tops, steep in ale, and take as an ordinary drink. This may be used at the beginning of a dropsy, even without purging, and it will do good. Or as follows: EK conserve of garden scurvy grass, conserve of Roman wormwood, AA4G, extract of gentian, extract of mugwort, extract of lesser centauri, AA3I. Make into an electuary, of which a portion, the size of a large nutmeg, must be taken every morning at 5 p.m. and at evening. Wash down with 4 ounces of the following infusion: K. gentian root, broom tops, lesser centauri, common mugwort, a handful. Fennel seed, rock parsley seed, AA31, cut up small, and add 4 pints of Rhenish wine. Steep in the cold infusion. Strain as wanted for use. 9. Note: this must also be the rule whilst he is taking the lixiviated salts, at which time he must strengthen himself by taking leaves of garden scurvy grass, leaves of common tops, broom tops. 3 sliced oranges, steep in 6 gallons of strong ale, not hopped during fermentation. Take this as an ordinary drink. Chapter 33. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on a Virulent Gonorrhea, 1. An unusual pain in the parts of generation, and a rotation of the testicles, with those who have not been circumcised, a spot like that of the measles on the glands. As soon as this appears, there is a discharge from the urethra of a liquor like semen, which every day losing its original color and appearance becomes at last like the yolk of an egg, except that it is pale. If the disease be virulent, it looks greenish, and is moreover mixed with a watery matter or even tinged with blood. Meanwhile, the aforesaid pustule becomes an ulcer. At first it resembles the aphy in the mouths of infants. It spreads, however, day by day, becoming broader and deeper whilst the edges grow hard and callous. The pustule is rarely attended by gonorrhea in patients who have been circumcised. 2. Great pain during erections, just as if the penis was violently squeezed sideways, now occurs. This is worst at night when the patient is warm in bed. The frenum being contracted, the penis is bent down. When this curve is straightened by erection, the pain is most acute. Ardor urine now occurs. During the passage of the water, it is not so sharp. When, however, the patient has finished making water, a burning pain is felt all along the urethra, and is worst in the parts within the glands. The presence of caruncles stops the passage of the urine, and pain and inflammation of the scrotum sometimes supervene. Capel coke mag, 5 extract of rudium, 3 jalap. Scammony AA, Thres, Opobalsam, QS. Make 6 pills out of every drachma of the full mass. 4 of these are to be swallowed every morning, until the ardor urine and the yellow color of the discharge have materially decreased. If this take place, the pills may be taken every other day. This the patient does for another fortnight, after this twice a week, until the discharge from the urethra has wholly ceased. 3. In patients who are hard to move, an additional purge may be intercalated. This should be the common purgative potion, with 2 drachms of the syrup of buckthorn, and the rose juice electuary. Or, if the cure be still imperfect, the turbith mineral may be given twice a day in doses of 8 grains, and at intervals of 4 days. Or, instead of the turbith mineral lights, pylo, calomel, nage, opobalsam, QS, make into 4 pills, to be taken the first thing in the morning. 4. If the patient be repugnant to the aforesaid catharsis, he must, after taking the pills in question 3 mornings running, throw up the following clister every morning and at 5 p.m., except once or twice a week when the following purge may be substituted: Venice treacle in yolk of egg, AA barley water, ojai strain, and add syrup of violets, 3 jar. Mix and make into a clister. 5 every night, 25 drops of opobalsam or of the balsam of Mecca on a lump of sugar. If this cannot be had, Cyprian turpentine, about as much as is the size of a hazelnut, may be used instead. The drink must be wine, small beer at meals. 6 or erpilui duobus, Thres, opobalsam, meat. Make into 3 pills, taken at 4 a.m., sleep after taking them. Repeat every other or every 3rd day. On the days where there is no purging, throw up the aforesaid clister at 5 p.m. and in the morning. 8. As the cure proceeds, no matter what be the method, blood must be drawn when the patient one's about halfway through the treatment, and this once or twice. A cool and thickening diet, too, must be prescribed, as well as the medicines of like virtue, e.g., the whey and emulsions of the cool seeds, and C9 if the penis swell, K marshmallow root, lily root, Aazis mallow leaves, elder leaves, henbane leaves, chamomile flowers, melala fenugreek, Aa thress, water, make into a fomentation to be applied to the part affected 1 hour, twice or thrice a day. When the fomentation is over, smear the penis with fresh drawn linseed oil. Then apply the emplastrum e mucilaginibus on a skin to the tumid lips of the prepuce. 10. If there be an ulcer in the lips of the prepuce or in the gland itself, give K basilicon 5 EV, tobacco ointment. 3E, red precipitate washed in rose water and finely pulverized, dress, mix, and make into a liniment. Lay it on lint and apply it to the ulcer immediately after each fomentation. 11. If the serotum swell, bleed it once from the arm and apply the aforesaid fomentation twice a day. Add with each application a spoonful or two of brandy or a poultice of oxycrat and bean meal. 19. Meanwhile, purges and refrigerants are to be taken internally. Chapter 34. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the Luz Venerea 1. When a gonorrheus of astringents, a taint has been imparted to the blood, luz arises. Buboes appear on the groins. There is pain in the head, limbs, and joints, especially when the patient is warm in bed. There are crusts and scurves in various parts of the body which are yellow, like honeycombs. The worse the scabies, the easier the pains. On the pericranium, the shin bones and arms, there are exostoses. There is inflammation and caries of the bones. Phagedenic ulcers in various parts of the body, most in the fosses. These spread gradually along the fosses and palate and destroy the cartilage of the nose, which then falls in. The caries, ulceration, and pain increase. Limb by limb, the patient drops off, and his lacerated body, a burthen on earth, falls into the grave. Crude mercury Aa3. Mix and make into a liniment to be divided into 3 equal parts, one of which is to be rubbed in on the arms, thighs, and calves 3 nights running by the patient with his own hands. 2. If 3 days after the last inunction there be no salivation, 8 grains of turbith mineral must be given out of conserve of red roses, in weekly bodies, a scruple of calomel. If the salivation set in, but fall off before the disappearance of the symptoms, it must be stimulated by an occasional dose of calomel 3. It ought so to be managed as to give about 4 pints of saliva in 24 hours. 4. If it go too far and be attended with excessive inflammation and similar symptoms, it must be checked a little by means of cathartic medicines until it attains its proper degree of intensity. 5. Fire. As soon as the symptoms have ceased, change the shirt and sheets, and put as fresh ones those that have been used before. 6. If diarrhea supervene, as it does sometimes before the salivation has come out fully, it must be checked with liquid laudanum, given in increased doses until it has done its work. If the mouth be ulcerated, let it be washed with damask rose water, or with milk and water, or with the following decoction: EK marshmallow root, cleansed barley, Aa3. Boil to 2 pints, mix, and make into a gargle, to be used frequently. 8. The diet and the rest of the regimen must be the same as whilst the patient purged, except that for the first few days he may take barley broth, oatmeal gruel, posset drink, or a thin small beer warmine. When all this has been done, and when the symptoms seem to have gone off, we must guard against a relapse by giving a scruple of calomel once a week for 3 weeks or a month, however well the patient may be, and although he may be able to go about in the open air. Chapter 35. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Floralbus. 1. 2. Discharge is white, pale, yellow, green, or blackish. At times acrid and corrosive, at times foul, acrid, and corrosive, at times foul and bad smelling. The face is discolored. The spine of the back eye is in pain. The appetite falls off. The eyelids and feet swell. 2. Bleed from the arm to 8 ounces. Epil coke major. Dij castor. G. Balsam of Peru. Make into 4 pills to be taken at 4 a.m. Sleep afterwards. Repeat twice, leaving intervals of 1 or 2 days according to the strength of the patient. Ek Ru water Zif. Compound Bryony water 33. Crystalline sugar QS. Make into a julep of which take 3 or 4 spoonfuls when faint and weak. Then conserve of orange peel Tojai, Diascordium, yes, candied ginger, candied nutmeg, a 5. Gascoigne's powder, cis pomegranate rind, angelica, red coral, lozenges of terralemnia, 5. Bol armeniac DG. Gum Arabic Thress, syrup of dried roses, QS make into an electuary, of which a portion the size of a large nutmeg must be taken every morning at 5 p.m. and at night for a whole month. Wash down with masterwort angelica sweet flag, AHSS, Roman wormwood, white horehound lesser centauri calamint, sage dry a handful. Let them stand in the cold infusion, strain when wanted. 3. The diet must be digestible meats, without fruit and vegetables. Cherry wine at dinner. Chapter 36. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Diabetes. Tug juices of the blood make a way out through the urinary passages in an unconcocted form. Hence, the strength gradually lessens and the body weakens, its substance being acid were pumped out through the common sink of the bladder. Then there are thirst, heat of the viscera, swelling of the legs and hips, and the frequent expectoration of a viscid and frothy saliva. The treatment is that of fluor albus, with the omission only of the bleeding and purging. Chapter 37. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Piles. Intense pain at stools, the stools being streaked with blood. At times, tumors like warts lurk under the sphincter or appear on the margin of the anus. Bleed to 10 ounces from the right arm. Key are your melon seeds, gourd seeds, $1 white poppy seeds, 3 IG, sweet almonds, peeled, V pound in a marble mortar, dropping in gradually. Barley water, rose water, 31, best white sugar, QS, fiat emulsio secundum artem. Of this 3 ounces are to be taken frequently. Licorice sage in powder, AI5 balsam of Lucatelli QS. Make 6 pills out of each drachm of these, take 3 a day. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of the emulsion, EK frog spawn water, Zif, dissolve in this 2 drachms of litharge, opium, 3J, make into a mixture. Of this apply a little to the part affected on a linen rag, or if the tumor be internal, let 3 spoonfuls of the same be injected as a clister. Milk, boiled with water or barley water, is the ordinary drink, no meat. Every night a dose of diacodium. Chapter 38. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Immoderate Hemorrhoidal Discharges. These are made manifest by the prostration of the patient's strength, by the abundance of the blood, by the duration of the hemorrhage, and by the unnatural hue of the body, which becomes lemon-colored, approaching the hue of jaundice. Cachexy follows this, and dropsy the cachexy. Excepting only the catharsis, the treatment is the treatment of the immoderate menstrual flux. Chapter 39. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the Epilepsy of Children. L2S may begin so early as the first month from overfrequent alveine evacuations. In this case, diascordium, about as much as a grain of pepper, dissolved in saxifrage water or in the mother's milk, is a most excellent remedy. Or it may come on during teething between the 7th and 19th months, accompanied by cough, or by what is much worse, green vomit like that of hysteria, and diarrhea, too. At tea times the fit comes on without warning. The face becomes livid, the eyes and mouth distorted, the limbs convulsed. At times it is indicated beforehand by a contraction of the finger, or by a fixed and strange immobility of the eyeballs. Sometimes sooner, sometimes later, the fits break out, at times at regular intervals, at times at vague and uncertain periods. In cases where they allow a truce, the infants are drowsy until a fresh attack resuscitates them. Apply a blister to the nape of the neck at once. ET liquid laudanum MJ, EG or more according to age. Syrup of PC Onis 3, mix and make into a draft, to be taken as soon as possible. Aqua epileptica langii, compound bryony water, Aa toje, syrup of cloves, thresses mix, and make into a julep, of which a spoonful is to be taken every hour in case the draught last prescribed have not dispelled the fit. Chapter 40. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Rickets. In rickets there is a softness and laxity of the parts, weakness and languor, sluggishness and torpor, and, besides this, unequal nutrition. Thus the head is oversized, the face overflorid and overfull, whilst the parts below are emaciated. The joints project in nodes, the wrists somewhat more than the ankles. The ends of the ribs swell, the bones become curved, especially the tibia and fibula. Sometimes this is the case with those of the ulna and radius, and even of the thigh and humerus. The teeth come late and painfully, are loose in their sockets, and fall out in bits. The chest is narrow at the sides and pointed in front, the belly being full and the hypochondrias tense. Cough and weakness of the lungs supervened. In lying down, the patient sometimes favors his right, sometimes his left side. Chique leaves of common mugwort, lesser centaury, white horehound, germander, scordium, calamint, feverfew, meadow saxifrage, saint, John's wort, goldenrod, wild thyme, mint, sage, rue, saint, Benedict's thistle, pennyroyal, southernwood, chamomile, tansy, lily of the valley, all fresh gathered and cut up small. A handful, hog's lard, TB4, mutton suet, TB edge claret, Ouija. Soak in an earthen jar over the hot ashes for 12 hours. Then boil until the liquor is consumed. Strain and make into a liniment. Anoint the belly and hypochondries morning and evening, as well as the limbs affected, for 30 or 40 days, or until convalescence. Eat keck of each of the aforesaid 2 handfuls. Soak in 4 gallons of unhopped beer. Use the cold infusion as a drink. In tumors occupying the bellies of infants, arising from excessive evacuations, the blood and viscera must be comforted by restorative herbs, just as in true rickets, except that, in this case, the armpits on each side must be anointed, but not the limbs. Chapter 41. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on fever arising from dentition. 3 or 4 drops of spirits of hartshorn, according to the age of the patient, must be given every 4 or 6 hours, out of 1 or 2 spoonfuls of black cherry water, or any other fit vehicle. Chapter 42. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the hectic fever of infants. They pine away without any notable heat. The appetite falls off, the limbs and trunk become emaciated. Steep 2 drachms of sliced rhubarb in a glass bottle, holding a quart of beer, and give this as an ordinary drink. When this is drunk out, add another quart of beer to the same rhubarb. Afterwards, a third. If the beer become too soon saturated with the rhubarb, add a second pint when only half the first bottle has been taken. Yes. Chapter 43. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On the convulsive cough of children, Tuts is only subdued by bleeding and repeated purges, and is a disease otherwise most obstinate and incurable. Still the cathartics must be mild, and given only in spoonfuls according to the patient's age. Chapter 44. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on hemorrhage from the nostrils. Swarring pain and heat in the forepart of the head, bleed frequently. Let the diet be of the cooling and thickening sort. Let cooling and thickening juleps be given. Throw up a cooling clister every morning. Every night give a paregoric of syrup of poppies. Purge with the common potion every day. Fold a linen rag in 4 folds. Soak it in a cold solution of sal prunella. Squeeze it out gently. Apply it to the head and back of the neck several times a day. After the evacuation, K. Hungarian vitriol alum eratoi. Phlegma vitriolicum, I'll spoil, until everything is dissolved. Filter the cooled liquor and separate it from the crystals. To the remainder, add a 12th part of the oil of vitriol, or, which is better, Cape plantain water, Zijbol, Armeniac, finely powdered, ISSEs mixed thoroughly. Steep a plug of linen in the mixture and leave in the nostril from which the bleeding comes for 2 days. If this fail, dissolve some Roman vitriol in cold water. Plug the nostril with the same. Linen rags steeped in this liquor stop bleedings from the external parts as well. Chapter 45. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the green sickness. Tug face and body lose color. The face also swells. So do the eyelids and ankles. The body feels heavy. There is tension and lassitude in the legs and feet. Dyspnea, palpitation of the heart. Headache, febrile pulse, somnolence, pica, and suppression of the menses. The patient must take the chalybeate pill, or else the chalybeate powder described in the account of the hysterical affection. The dose must be regulated by her age. She may also take the restorative infusion with Angelica, described in Chap I. Unless very weak, she may be purged before the use of the corroborants. Chapter 46. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on suppression of the menses. Dislike to food, discoloration of the face, heaviness of the whole body, pain in the forepart of the head, loins, legs, and lower belly. Swellings of the feet. The prescriptions are the same as in the hysterical affection, and in case they do not yield to these, the following must be prescribed. Every morning and at 4 p.m. she must take 5 spoonfuls of the hysterical julep, without the castor, with the addition of 12 drops of hartshorn. Every night at bedtime, she must take a scruple of the myrrh lozenges, made into the form of pills, or a bolus with syrup of wormwood. Chapter 47. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on vomiting and spitting of blood. 1. In spitting of blood, there is heat and pain in the chest, accompanied by weakness. 2. Bleed from the right arm to 10 ounces. Next morning, give the common purgative potion in the same night, a paregoric of an ounce of syrup of poppies, out of 3 of black cherry water. 3 Doyle 3. After this, order as follows: E.K. Bola, Armeniac, 3. Powder of comfrey root, 5 G. Terrasigillata, bloodstone, dragon's blood, AA 3. Finest white sugar, as much as all the rest. Mix and make into a very fine powder. Of this, take a drachm every morning. At 5 p.m. and at night, wash down with 4 ounces of the following aposum: Chi plantain leaves, blackberry leaves, yarrow, a handful. Water, QS boiled, a half a pint. Dissolve in the strained liquor 2 ounces of syrup of comfrey. Mix and make into an aposum. Or 6 spoonfuls of the following tincture: 9 flowers of the red rose, 5 edge, inner bark of the oak, GSCS plantain seeds, but little bruised, 3 ige, spirits of vitriol, QS to give acidity. Put into a close vessel and boil at a gentle heat for 4 hours. Strain and add barley water with cinnamon zege. Finest white sugar, QS sweetened to taste, ill in 1904. If there be a repugnance to powder, the electuary chap. 27 may be given. 5 a clister every day, and diacodium at bedtime. 6 bleed as occasion requires, once, twice, or thrice. At the intervals of a few days, the purgative potion to be repeated frequently, if needful. 7. A cool and thickening diet must be observed. Chapter 48. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the puncture of a tendon. Aqueous humor, or ichor, is continually oozing from the orifice of the vein. E.K. lily roots boiled in milk until soft, and then bruised, ziv. Linseed meal, oatmeal, eyes each. Boil to the consistency of a poultice in the same milk in which the roots were boiled. Apply to the parts night and morning. Chapter 49. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on burns foment the parts with linen rags dipped in spirits of wine. Until the pain departs, dip the rag afresh, and apply it 2 or 3 times a day to the part affected. Chapter 50. The works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on common mania. 1. Tuts arises from too vivid and exalted a crisis of the blood. There is also another sort of mania, which succeeds long-continued intermittent fevers, and at last degenerates into idiocy. This comes from weakness and vapidity of blood, brought on by overlong fermentation. 2. Prescribe the warmer cordials, such as Venice treacle, egg electuary, the Countess powder, Sir Walter Raleigh's powders, out of plague water, treacle water, or other fit vehicles. Let the diet, moreover, be an eleptic. In young patients, bleed from the arm to 8 or 9 ounces once or twice, with 3 days between each venesection. Then bleed from the jugular vein. After this, the treatment will consist wholly in the following purge, which must be given every 3rd or 4th day until convalescence, observing only that after the patient has been purged 8 or 10 times, the exhibition of the cathartic may be omitted for a week or 2. EK root of the white bryony in powder, 5 teed milk, zif or e-cake of the same, GSE or 5 veg, white wine, sieve, steep for a whole night, strain, dissolve in the strained liquor syrup of violets, 3J mix, and make into a potion. K Dambojgr. 14. Black cherry water, 3IJ, syrup of cloves, thrust and make into a potion. Chapter 51. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on bruises. Bruise up from the side, affected to 10 ounces. Next morning, give the common purging potion, then bleed and purge in turns till recovery. Throughout the sickness, if the inward parts be hurt, give Kiar pectoral decoction, OSE, syrup of violets, syrup of maidenhair, AIZI. Make into an apposum of which half a pint is to be taken 3 times a day. A spoonful of the oil of sweet almonds, freshly expressed, may be taken frequently. Kiar oil of sweet almonds, marshmallow ointment, pomatum AA pound, J mix, and make into a liniment to be applied to the part affected morning and evening. Cover with a cabbage leaf. Chapter 52. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on a scalded head, the common purge twice, then chique oil of bitter almonds, oil of laurel, ashes of the southernwood AA3. Mix well together and make into a liniment. With this, rub the whole of the head every morning carefully. Cover with a pig's bladder. The head must be shaved as soon as possible, and the scales must be carefully rubbed away every morning as they become likely to fall off. Chapter 53. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on the bite of a mad dog. After 40 days or more, melancholic symptoms appear: thirst, fever, hydrophobia, and, at last, convulsions of the extremities, spirits of wine, rectified, zif, Venice treacle 3. Make into a mixture to be rubbed on the part affected thrice a day. Cover with a linen rag steeped in the same. Chapter 54. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On an ulcer of the bladder, fetid pus or bladder, and sometimes squambles or membranaceous palliers, like brandy crusts, are passed along with the urine. If there be an ulcer in the kidneys, minute and sometimes even large-sized pieces of flesh are voided. A continual dysuria and pain affect the urinary organs, although if the mischief be in the kidney, there are clear and definite intervals of both, whilst the pus which is excreted is white, smooth, and scarcely at all fetid. The urine is like milk, and some time after it has been passed, the pus separates and settles at the bottom of the chamber plaster of the flaws, unguentorum triest. Make into 9 pills. Of these 3 are to be taken at the usual hours. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of EK fennel root, bindweed, birthwort, clovegill flower, AAZH, agrimony leaves, St. John's wort, bugles, sanicle, plantain, 2A6 handfuls. Cut small and soak in white wine, milk, AA oiv, distill to 2 pints. Root of the larger bindweed, gum arabic, Tojai, barley sugar, 3IG, make into a powder, of which take a spoonful twice a day. Chapter 55. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on inveterate asthma, in patients of a sanguine temperament. This arises from infarction of the lungs and is without stertor. 2D asthma, in which the respiration is laborious and frequent, and in which the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, along with the muscles of the abdomen, are violently moved, and where there is stertor and sibilant. In the first of these kinds, the substance of the lungs; in the second, the bronchi are stuffed up. 3 orthopnea. This is the most extreme form of difficult respiration, where the patient can only breathe by having his head and shoulders raised. The muscles, too, of the chest and shoulder blades are violently agitated. Bleed from the right arm to 10 ounces. The next day, take the common purgative potion and repeat it every 3rd day for 2 more times. On the days when there is no purging, Ache aniseed very finely powdered, 3 Ig. Balsam of Locatelli QS. Make 6 pills to the drachm of these, take 3 every morning, all at 5 p.m. Wash down with 4 ounces of the bitter decoction, warm and without its purging ingredients. If the symptoms continue, repeat the whole process a second time. Chapter 56. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. On palsy, sense and motion, one or both, are either wholly lost or impaired in the parts affected. Kyle-Cock major in doses of 2 scruples, every other morning for 6 times. Then 2 drachms of antiscorbutic electuary, washed down with 6 spoonfuls of the aqua antiscorbutica. K. unguentum nervinum, compound spirits of lavender, spirits of garden scurvy grass, AA this mix, and rub it on the parts affected, e.g. the spine of the back, night and morning. Most of the prescriptions for scorbutic paralysis, since they preeminently dissipate and volatilize the crude and fixed humors. Chapter 57. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on coughs and phthisis. 2 cough betrays itself. The phthisis comes on between the 18th and 35th years. The whole body becomes emaciated. There is a troublesome hectic cough which is increased by taking food and which is distinguished by the quickness of the pulse and the redness of the cheeks. The matter spit up by the ceiphus, bloody or purulent. When burnt, it smells fetid. When thrown into water, it sinks. Night sweats supervene. At length, the cheeks grow livid, the face pale, the nose sharp. The temples sink, the nails curve inwards, the hair falls off, and there is colloquative diarrhea, the forerunner of death. 2. If the cough be still recent, and if it have not yet brought on fever, bastard parapneumony, or any other proper physical sign, or if it have not arisen out of the remains of a pleurisy or a parapneuma, whereof from insufficient bleeding, the cure was imperfect, it will be sufficient for the patient to abstain for a few days from wine and meat, and use ad libitum such remedies as the following. 9. Of the balsam of sulfur with anise, 10 drops out of a spoonful of crystalline sugar. The following tablets which the patient should carry about with him and take one at a time frequently. X sugar candy, Pamzis, spring water, QS. Boil until the sugar sticks to the ends of the fingers. Then add licorice root, elecampane, aniseed angelica, the seeds, $1. Assess orris root, flowers of sulfur, $3. Essential oil of aniseed, 9 each. Make into tablets secundum. Label them as household medicines. 4. In the meanwhile, the following eclegma may be used. Chique oil of sweet almonds, syrup of maidenhair, syrup of violets, toji, sugar candy, QS. Make into a lohak to be taken off a stick of licorice whenever the cough is troublesome. 5. When the deflection is of the thin sort, thickening eclegmata may be given. 6. If the cough will not yield to these remedies, and when it has arisen from parapneumony, or from pleurisy, or is accompanied by fever, and this is generally the case, it is folly to trust to pectorals. The disease must be attacked by bleeding and purging, as directed in the chapter on bastard parapneumony. 7. If, notwithstanding the latter method, the cough not only continue, but so shake the lungs as to have paved the way for phthisis, the treatment must be as follows. To be dropped into a spoonful of ground ivy, or, if that be disagreeable to the taste, a spoonful of crystalline sugar, to be taken 3 times a day. To be washed down with 4 ounces of the bitter decoction without its purging ingredients. If ever, when thus given, it move the bowels, 3 ounces only must be taken. 9. But of all the remedies for phthisis, long and continued journey on horseback bear the bell, in respect to which it must be noted that if the patient be past the prime of life, more exercise of the sort in question must be taken than if he were a youth or boy. Dark is no surer a cure for ague than riding for phthisis. Chapter 58. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2, on Scorbutus. Weariness, independent of exertion, heaviness of the body, dyspnoea, especially upon moving about, putrefaction of the gums, foul breath, frequent loss of blood from the nostrils, difficulty in walking. The legs sometimes swell, sometimes waste, with livid leaden-colored, yellow, or violet-colored spots. The face is generally of a sallow paleness. 2 bleed to 6 ounces unless there be dropsy. Next morning, give the common purging potion and repeat it every 3rd day twice. 3. On the days when there is no purging, and also a month or 2 after, the patient must take a conserve of garden scurvy grass, 3 g, conserve of lugula, 3 g, compounder of cuckoo pint, 5 edge. Make into an electuary, of which a portion about the size of a large nutmeg is to be taken every morning at 5 p.m. and at night. Wash down with 6 spoonfuls of the aqua rafani composita, or else of Ek horseradish root, rasped, 1b, J, cuckoo pint root, 1j, leaves of garden scurvy grass, 12 handfuls, mint, sage, watercress, brooklime, 6 handfuls, seeds of the garden scurvy grass, slightly bruised, obviouses, nutmeg thress, white wine, ibidite. Distill in a common still so as to give no more than 6 pints for use. 4. Or the leaves of fresh garden scurvy grass alone may be distilled for the same purpose. Moreover, the following beer must constitute the ordinary drink: 9 horseradish root, newly sliced, 3 Ig, leaves of garden scurvy grass, Lucio, raisins without the stones, VJ. Soak in a quart bottle of thin, small beer and cork closely. 9. In this way should be prepared, in the first instance, 6 bottles, and after a few days, 6 more, to be ready when the first are finished. Or, instead of this beer, 3 or 4 spoonfuls of the following mixture may be added to the patient's ordinary drink: R.C. horseradish root, seeds of the garden scurvy grass, $1.88, leaves of the same, 2 handfuls, the pulp of 1 orange, beat together in a marble mortar, and add gradually half a pint of white wine. Squeeze it moderately in the string and set by for use. 7. The same remedies, with the omission of the bleeding and purging, are very efficacious in both scorbutic and hysterical rheumatism. Chapter 59. The Works of Thomas Sydenham, Volume 2. The description and cure of a decline, 1. Turn are many kinds of tabes. The first arises from cold taken during winter. A little before the winter solstice many persons take it. When any of such have weak lungs, it is only natural that the continued effort of coughing should weaken them still more. Hence, from a faulty diathesis, they become incompetent to due assimilation of their proper aliment. Then a vast mass of crude phlegm accumulates, which from continual coughing and from the vehement efforts of the lungs is rejected by the mouth. The lungs, replete with pure, disperse purulent miasmata over the whole of the body. Hence arises putrid fever, which is worse towards the evening, whilst in the morning it bathes the patient in copious and debilitating sweats. To crown all, in the Latin fabs, diarrhea sets in partly from putrid humors deposited and excreted by the mesenteric arteries in the intestines, partly from the weakened and depraved tone of the viscera. Hence the patient dies during the following summer, a winter's cough having paved the way to his death. This is the chief sort of abes or decline. 2. The blood at the season in question is loaded with humid particles, and the perspiration through the pores of the skin being checked by their sudden contraction, the aforesaid particles become dispersed along the branches of the pulmonary artery, or else are deposited by the salivary ducts in the glands which occupy the fosses. The humor then finds its way from the trachea to the lungs, like a catarrh, and the frequency and vehemence of the cough produce the debility and the symptoms which have been already noticed. The lungs can now no longer retain their natural status and economy, so that glandules and tubercles arise. Hence, in patients who have died of this disease, we find on inspection that they are distended with a purulent sanes. 9. When this disease has taken strong root, medicines are generally of no avail. Still treatment may be tried, e.g., bleeding from the arm, and mild catharsis for the sake of diminishing the deflection with pectoral medicines, accommodated to the different stages of the disease. Increscent where the humor is of such subtlety and tenuity as to be incapable of expulsion, attenuant when it is thick, and brought up laboriously. Then the hectic fever must be checked by cooling remedies. Of this sort Arius's milk aqua lactis dilatetia, emulsion of sweet almonds, of melon seeds, of gourd seeds, of white poppy, of cowslip flower water, and seed. Lastly, an attempt must be made to cure the ulcer, for which purpose the liquid turpentine, called opobalsam, one's particularly adapted. For the treatment of the disease is, in my mind, as follows. Bleed in the first instance, then purge for 3 days running, either with the Pillcock Major or with the lenitive decoction already noticed. On the third night, give half an ounce of the syrup of poppies. After an interval of 2 or 3 days, according to circumstances, repeat the purge, and do this as often as is necessary, 1E, until the symptoms either wholly or partially disappear. After each purge, give 2 drops of opobalsam on a large lump of sugar. Drink nothing after them. Take in their stead a pill of Chion turpentine with sugar candy. The opobalsam is not to be taken except after previous evacuations. Instead of this, an electuary balsam of Leucatelli, licorice powder, aniseed, and turpentine may be substituted. After the evacuations, great care must be taken to allay the cough, lest the lungs be harassed by the continual irritation. The aforesaid syrup does this. It may be given in the following formula: Chi pectoral decoction, OJ, syrup of poppies, syrup of maidenhair, AA33. Take 5 spoonfuls 3 times a day. 5. This will prevent the catarrh from falling on the lungs, and unless the change has gone too far, will bring them to their previous state of health. It will also promote the concoction of the purulent matter. 6. The pulmonary remedy, however, is daily riding on horseback, which is all in all. Do this, and you may neglect the rules of diet and deprive yourself of no sort of meat or drink. In some cases of recovery thus brought about, there is a swelling of the neck, not unlike that of scrofula. 7. There is another sort of decline which arises from coughs beginning at every different period of the year. During the beginning of the summer, it occurs in young patients whose system is weak and whose humors are hot and acrid. If they have overindulged in wine, such subjects will spit blood. They feel pain or discomfort in the chest. Unless such symptoms be relieved by appropriate remedies, there will come from them first soreness, next an ulcer, and lastly pus. This sort of decline is easily subdued, at least in the beginning, by bleeding and purging alternately twice repeated, provided that the patient use a cooling and thickening diet and wholly abstain from animal food. 9.5. The 3 sorts of this disease originate in the matter of fever becoming deposited in the lungs, just as the fever itself is giving way. The patients, being weakened, are harassed by the aforesaid symptoms. 10. Sometimes it arises from the purulent sanes, which in pleuridie patients has not been thoroughly expectorated. In such a case, the treatment one's that of an empyema. 1L. Lastly, tabes may arise from the weakness consequent on inordinate evacuate. Here there are hectic flushes, chiefly towards the evening after meals. Here, too, aphthia are particularly common.